Welcome to our special program, The Filipino Votes, an election primer. I'm Pio Ontiveros.
Monday, May 13th is Decision Day. An estimated 63 million Filipinos are eligible to vote to fill more than 18,000 national and local positions, while the chief executive himself is not on the ballot, as he is only halfway through his 6-year term. This democratic exercise is seen as a referendum on his performance. President Rodrigo Duterte enjoying high approval and trust ratings from a growing population most concerned with improving their lives, seeking a way out of their poverty, and gaining access to affordable health care. May 13th will be another opportunity for Filipinos to make their voices heard, to choose the leaders they will entrust with making a lasting positive impact on their lives. This is a CNN Philippines special presentation, The Filipino Votes, an election primer.
Monday's midterm elections will test the strength of our democracy. More than 60% of the Filipino population are eligible to vote. In this program, we'll take a closer look at this upcoming electoral process, from the voters to the candidates and major policy issues that will define the May 13th polls. Joining me now here in the studio, COMELEC spokesman, Director James Jimenez, the Media Director of the Parish Pastoral Council for Responsible Voting, or PPCRV, Agnes Hervasio, and the Ana Tabunda of Pulse Asia Research. Welcome to the program. Also here with us, the spokesman for the Philippine National Police, Police Colonel Bernard Banac, and our resident political analyst, Dindo Manhit. Thank you to all of you and welcome to the show, everybody. Well, let's begin with this, of course. The safety and security of voters are very top, very big priority. Malacanang assuring us that the Philippine National Police and the military are ready. Colonel Banac, you are ready, of course.
Yes, Pia. The Philippine National Police is ready to provide security for the May 13 polls on Monday. And we have tasked and deploying 149,000 PNP personnel all over the country.
Mm-hmm. When you say deploying 149,000 personnel, these are police who are assigned already in the various regions, and then they're just being fanned out to the different towns and provinces.
That's correct. That includes already the PNP personnel that are already assigned in the various police stations and provinces and regions across the country. And we have a standby force also that is ready to be deployed also anytime if there is a crisis or emergency. Or
standby force in the different regions or only here in Metro Manila? Is this what you call the regional mobile force in each region?
That's right. And in each region there will be a standby force, and even here at the national headquarters at Camp Crame there will be another standby force, and also from Camp Aguinaldo from the Armed Forces of the Philippines there will be also a standby force. So they'll be ready to be deployed anytime when there is a crisis or emergency or any untoward incident that may happen. But of course, we assure the Filipino people, the public, that the situation is under control right now. Even as we approach the last remaining days of the campaign period, the situation is pretty good. The peace and order is very good, and we maintain our high alert status. We are on full alert status.
Yeah,
so,
okay. And if anything goes wrong, you are, of course, like you said, on high alert, red alert status. So you can deal with any situation. When you talk about any situation, what is the worst case scenario we're thinking of?
Well, we're thinking of a terrorist attack, of course, that may happen also anytime. No? If these people would really sow terror and create trouble, we have to find a way to really prevent it.
Yeah.
And of course, if such thing will happen, we are ready to respond to it. But of course, as much as possible, we would want to prevent any of this kind, any terrorist act that would disrupt the election.
Interesting that you say terrorist attack. What specific intel information do you have?
Well, in the areas where placed under the red category by the COMELEC, most of these places are in Mindanao, and where we find the terrorist groups like the Abu Sayyaf group, the Communist Terrorist New People's Army, and some elements of the breakaway of the BIFF.
Yeah.
So all these groups, threat groups, may pose some threat also
Yeah.
to the coming polls. But just the same, we are ready to respond to any of these eventualities, and we hope to maintain this peace and order situation we have right now, even during the election day itself and beyond election day.
Again, I have to use the word interesting because number 2 on your list, the communist terrorist group, right? And lately, in the last month or so, we've noticed that the PNP has been talking a lot in all the different regions about your interest and your focus on the NPAs.
Well, because we warned all the local chief executives who are running for election that they should not give in to the demands of the communist terrorists for protection to win, permit to campaign, permit to win. So they should not give in to these demands, because if they do, then they may be charged also for financing terrorism and violation of their code of ethical standards, being public officials. And even if they get re-elected, when charges, if evidence warrants and charges will be filed against them, even if they get elected, the cases would still be valid, and they may be removed from their posts.
Right. One last brief point for the PNP in the, not ARMM, the Bangsamoro Organic Law plebiscite in January. Napansin po natin just a few months ago na some policemen had to serve as as plebiscite
Boards of election tellers.
Boards of election tellers, no? And this was an emergency situation. So this time around, I understand, and correct me if I'm wrong, meron pong training para sa ibang mga police to do just that, to step in kung kailangan?
Yes, we have prepared for this contingency. In fact, we have undergone, 1,404 of our personnel have undergone training as BET, and if there is a need for them to be deployed during the election day, then we are ready to deploy them. But as of now, we have not monitored any threat that may disrupt election on Monday, such that the teachers will not be able to come and perform their duties. But just the same, we are ready to deploy them, those 1,400 personnel who have been trained by COMELEC to act as BET should the need arise.
Okay. Well, speaking of training by COMELEC, among the groups that get trained by COMELEC and help COMELEC in the election process is, of course, the PPCRV. One of our guests is from there, and I'm very sorry I introduced you as Agnes Hervacio, but we've been corrected. Kanina na nga sinabi that it is Maribel Buenobra who is guesting today. So let's speak first. We're going to go back to the PNP and the other security matters in just a bit, but let's move on first. A key indicator of voters' interest in Monday's midterm elections is the number of people who signed up during the registration period. Now, more than 2.5 million registered last year. The COMELEC says that is about 1 million more than they expected. Now, that brings the total number of registered voters to about 63 million. Who are they, and what are they looking for in our leaders? What are the issues they want addressed? Let's begin first with James Jimenez. So, James, 63 million voters. Give us a breakdown in terms of Luzon, Visayas, Mindanao, ages, gender, etc.
As far as ages are concerned, you're looking at about a third of them being the youth, up to the age of 30. So that's about 22 million. There you go. Now, that makes them a very significant voting bloc. Of course, the biggest bloc is still the sort of middle-aged adults.
Pero age 60 and above, 9.1 million, ano?
Marami din sila.
Mga senior citizens.
Senior citizens, which is why it's very important that a lot of the features of the elections now have to do with giving them access to the voting precincts. You're also looking at a very, very young voting population, so we figure that that will be a factor in determining the outcomes.
Yeah, yung 2.5 million new voters, yan lahat mga bata yan.
Karamihan dyan ba?
Karamihan, oo.
The reason for that is because we had several successive SK registrations, so a lot of them sort of got enveloped into the system.
Yeah.
So now now they're part of the regular voting force, and that makes them a very significant.
Yeah. Oh. Well, let's make a correction here because a lot of people say the youngest generation, the millennials. No, so these are the kids born from hindi na kids, born 1977 to 1996. But there is a younger generation. They call them the plurals, born 1997 hanggang 2014.
Oh, those are called plurals?
Yeah, they're called
Okay.
plurals, or there's another term, escapes me at the moment. But so 1997 to 2014, yun yung 22 years old.
Yes.
No, for those born in 97. And some of them, mga first-time voters.
A lot of them are first-time voters, yes.
Okay.
And that's true. And the level of interest that we see among these voters is very high. For the most part, we see it in the way they engaged in the way they engage in public discussions about their choices, about what's important to them, and we believe that will translate to actual turnout during the elections.
Yeah. Well, a part of the number of voters are those who are registered abroad, yung mga overseas absentee voting.
That's why you have a 63 million vote count. Because locally, you're looking at about 61 million voters in the Philippines. And so you have an additional about 2 million, more or less, overseas.
Okay.
And these are, for the most part, overseas workers, OFWs.
So of the 2M overseas absentee voters, do we already have an idea how many of them voted?
No, we're still in the middle of the spike that happens during the last few weeks of voting. But it looks like the turnout is good in a lot of places. We have a lot of voters coming in from the Middle East, as always, and as expected, Hong Kong, of course, is one of the front runners.
What explains this, the spike in the turnout? In the last election, medyo mataas din yung turnout. Ano?
Yes.
Is it because of social media? There are more people aware, mas kumakalat ang info?
Well, I think it's really about about how the candidates have, or the political personalities in the Philippines have captured the imagination of the voters, mobilizing them essentially. Social media is an amplifier. It's not a source of that sort of inspiration. It's simply an amplifier. But again, ultimately, it'll be the candidates and the political personalities here. The spike now is because it's almost over. I mean, the voting period is almost over. We see that regularly. But when we're talking about the voter turnouts, yes, that has been slowly increasing as well.
Okay. Yeah, well, we were showing the numbers already, but let's just do a very quick review. So when we break them down by gender, for example, based on the 61 plus million voters, like you said earlier, James, so we haven't yet included yung overseas absentee. 51% female, 31...
Male. 31 million female, yeah.
31 million female, or 51%. Male voters account for 48%, or just about 30 million. Does this figure in any way, in the way...
Well, it does in a negative way, because there are more female voters. In terms of voter turnout, females are more likely to vote, and yet there are more male elected officials. So I guess in that respect, this is very, very interesting. There are still more male candidates than female, and so I guess that's the reason why there are more male winners. But yes, definitely females are, well, at least the females are a significant bit more numerous in terms of turnouts than the men.
Okay, well, let's speak to Dean Damanhit here, our political analyst, and Ana Tabunda of Pulse Asia. What do these numbers mean to us when we talk about more female voters than male voters, and the ages, the different age groups of our voters, and all these numbers? What do they mean to us, and what do they tell us about the elections? Ana Tabunda, Pulse Asia.
Well, the fact that there are more females and that their turnout is higher than that of males, then that will mean that the candidates will have to try to relate to them by covering their issues. That's one.
Covering their issues and what? Veering away from
Well,
statements that could alienate women. ganun ba?
yes, yes, maybe something like that. But actually, if you ask them what issues they really want to be addressed, it's irrespective of gender. So I guess even the general messages about poverty, jobs, pay, okay, that bringing down inflation, addressing trade law, that will appeal to the women as well as the men. It's just a question of you don't antagonize them unduly.
Yeah, okay. Well, talk to us about the different age groups.
Well, the different age groups, yes. As James had said, it's really the middle age groups who tend to turn out more than the younger age groups. It seems that well, first of all, the percentage of the 18 to 24 of the total voters is lower than their percentage in the adult population, indicating they don't even register normally at that age. Some of them start registering age 25, okay, when they probably have started families and are more interested on the impact on them of political developments. So they don't come out, they don't turn up as much as the older groups. Now, the senior citizens, they tend to be, they're smaller, okay? The biggest groups are your 35 to 44 and 45 to 54.
Really?
Senior
Okay.
citizens,
Yeah.
they can be quite dedicated in coming. It's almost like they want to leave a legacy. So they come as much as they can. They try and go. You do see them turning up
Yeah.
more than the 18 to 24.
All right, we'll have to go to a very brief break. When we come back, we're going to speak to Dindo Manhit, our political analyst. You're watching another CNN Philippines special presentation. When we return, a closer look at the issues Filipinos care deeply about. Stay with us. Halfway through the term of President Rodrigo Duterte, Filipino voters will head to the polls to fill more than 18,000 national and local positions. What are the issues weighing heavily on the minds of the voters? We are back with our guests, PNP spokesperson Colonel Bernard Banak, our resident political analyst Dindo Manhit, COMELEC spokesperson Director James Jimenez, Maribel Buenaobra of the Parish Pastoral Council for Responsible Voting, or PPCRV, and Ana Tabunda, Research Director for Pulse Asia. So, Dindo, before that, sorry, a couple of surveys over the last 6 months say Filipinos are most concerned about reducing poverty and improving healthcare. Based on a recent report by the Philippine Statistics Authority, the number of poor Filipinos declined in the first half of 2018. Dindo, we've been going through many different surveys in the last senatorial debate, the forums and different interviews, pinag-uusapan palagi poverty, healthcare, even issues about how voters feel about corruption. So what are the top issues, top of mind for voters when they go to the polls on Monday?
It's good to go back to some of the data that Pulse Asia shared. They call it personal concerns, where healthcare is top. And second to that is finishing school, which is basically education. So basic, what you call basic needs. And when you shift to urgent national concerns, then you cross very economic issues to the people. They speak of inflation, that means presyo ng bilihin, which was a big issue for the government last year. But nandiyan din yung the idea of poverty and jobs. That means livelihood to our people. So at the end of the day, these are issues that are, you'd say, gut issues to our voters, which is at nearly 62 million or 63 million if we will add overseas voters. So their votes might be based on what they concern in their day-to-day living. And that's the reality of every election. I always would argue that campaigns is all about voters. That means voter-centered. It's about understanding what they need, what their concerns are. And earlier, you were breaking it down with Director Jimenez, the idea of demographics. You have to understand who these voters are by trying to understand their age groupings, where the votes will come from. Because at the end of the day, it's a mistake to approach any election campaign, especially national, from a term of, I'll use the term, shotgun approach. It has to be targeted. Some even do micro-targeting, that is breaking down the demographics. And so you'd know where your votes will come from. But critical to that really is understanding the gut issues of your voters. So when you communicate to them, you have to address what their concerns are, and why will they vote for you at a local level? Why will they vote for you at the national level, as a legislator, as a senator? So those are things that candidates should consider. There are traditionalists who still view themselves as, oh, I'm the candidate, I believe I'm a good person, I sell myself. That's very old school, and that doesn't work anymore. Because at the end of the day, who cares if you consider yourself good if the voters don't even understand what you're talking about or you don't address their issue? So that's the challenge to any candidate or any campaign. That's why I always say that you have to start with understanding the demographics, the geographic area, understanding the issues and concerns of these voters. Then you build a campaign around how do you sell yourself as somebody that deserves their vote. In this case, you're fighting. It's easy to fight a group of candidates when you're fighting for 12 slots. It's harder when it's presidential, when it's a one-on-one or a vice presidential.
But in this election, even if we say that, those are the issues, no, poverty, healthcare, even corruption. Pero yung, for example, Ocho Diretso, no, the opposition slate, what they've been doing is, for example, attacking President Duterte and his allies. So are they missing the point? Because if you're saying that
I think they're missing a
poverty,
point.
so,
When you base your campaign and your opponent is President Duterte, who's not a candidate, that for me is the big step in missing the point. Second is, you're attacking a candidate that, according to Pulse Asia, is 87% approval rating. Am I right? Do I remember it right?
doing very well.
And
yeah.
you're attacking the number one issue, which is war on drugs, which is still relatively on that same number.
Which the surveys say, by the way, is quite popular.
But that's what I'm saying.
Yeah. Ang gusto lang ng tao, buhayin nyo lang yung
Yun, that's a big difference.
babalik tayo doon mamaya, Colonel
But
Banak.
still, that's what I'm saying. When you build a campaign believing this is what the people want, instead of understanding what the people want,
Yeah.
then you tend to lose out. And you see the results, tracking it.
Yeah,
But
okay.
what about what the people need? See, that's the problem.
That's not the role of...
Down that road lies populism.
That's not election. That's education. I'm just saying, if that's what you want, Director Vedas, that's 90 days does not give you that. It's an educational system. And there's no electoral system that will give you more than 90 days. So you cannot solve that with election. I'm a professor of political science, and I was a professor spending time on public policy. But I will not tell anyone who asks my advice that use this as a time to advocate your policy. You win first, then you build on your advocacy.
Okay.
Or you have 3 years to prepare for this campaign, build on that. But to use the 90 days to build on a campaign which the public doesn't want. Because at the end of the day, we are a democracy. And who are we to dictate on what the voters want? We have to respect also what the voters want.
Well, let's speak to Maribel Buenaobra of PPCRV. Yung mga sinasabing issues ni Dindo, no? As PPCRV Parish Pastoral Council for Responsible Voting, yung mga kasama nyo sa parokya, ang nakakausap ng PPCRV, no? Are these the issues for them?
I would agree with what Professor Manhit mentioned, as well as Ana Tabunda, no? When we go around the country conducting voters education fora or focus group discussions, those are the very issues that confront the voters. But when we do our voters education, we find out that it's the middle group, as mentioned by Ms. Ana Tabunda, that focus on the bread and butter issues, poverty, economics, healthcare. The 2.5% first-time vote, 2.5 million first-time voters and the 30% youth voters are the more idealistic one. So when we conduct, for example, voters education, we focus on that, and because 2019 is the year of the youth, we target the youth, which will be, hopefully, not jaded, not cynical, and willing to make a change for the country.
Okay. All right, we need to go to a very brief break. This is the Filipino Votes, an election primer. Coming up, we dissect the highly competitive Senate race, 62 candidates in all, fighting for just 12 seats. More about these aspirants and what's making them appeal or not appeal to the voting public when we return. You're watching CNN Philippines. More than 18,000 seats will be contested in Monday's May 13th midterm elections. 62 candidates competing for just 12 Senate seats. 7 are re-electionists who are rating high in the surveys over the past several months. Tamang-tama, we were talking about yung mga senatorial and how they're attacking the campaign. Anna Tabunda of Pulse Asia, before anything else, you just finished a survey yesterday, right? Which is coming out
2 days before Election Day.
2 days before Election Day, May 11.
We hope to release, yes.
Yeah, and there's no way that you can tell us right now. Just a sneak peek of.
I haven't seen it. They're still encoding it.
Okay, pero if we look at this, we're showing it now, yung April 10 to 14, and we all know what's happened. It's either the hugpong ng pagbabago and or candidates allied with President Duterte or who have been endorsed by him or by the PDP Laban are clearly within the winning range, within the 1 to 12 ranks. And you have the Ocho Diretso, well, falling, falling and falling, no? Or at the bottom rung of these 11 to 12, 13, 14 even. Hindi ba? Bam Aquino is right now within the 1 to 12, but you have Mar Rojas a little bit lower.
No, we have Bam Aquino just outside 1 to 12. But
Okay.
I think we have to remember that each time we have an election, the administration gets to pick those who are already likely to win. They get invited to join the coalition. So it's I think it's we have to bear that in mind. That of course they will
want to pick someone who has a winning
big chance of winning, so they can claim that they're slate. Most of them got in.
But the interesting example there is Bongo. When he started out, he was like what?
Number 30 plus.
Plus,
Even
and now
in
he's way up
Mindanao, he
there.
was down there.
Yeah, and now he's way up there because of President Duterte.
Not just. You have to remember he spent what, 420 million. It wasn't even campaign period yet.
Okay,
That kind of money, the other candidates spent
Don't
that
have.
during the election campaign.
Yeah.
So it was completely different. And it's not government money. That's another interesting part of it.
Okay. So we are, like you said, expecting a survey to come out May 11, Saturday. By then, of course, in a way, it's too late for
Yes,
many of the
but
candidates.
we think the candidates ought to know how they did during the last leg of the campaign for future campaigns. Because our last survey was taken about a month before Election Day. That's too far. So that they can get some lessons of what
For the
did they
next
do
elections
wrong.
na.
What did they do wrong? What did they do right?
Okay.
We think we also owe it to the people that they have some idea. Because we did have quite a shift between our March and our April survey, because we shifted to the use of ballots in April and we saw some really big drops across.
When you say
across
ballots, we're talking about the
these are facsimiles or copies
of the actual ballots that
ballot.
show a listing of the 62 names.
62 names is the way it appears in the COMELEC ballot, as well as the party list names, 134 of them.
Okay, Dindo, your take on the latest Pulse Asia survey. And, I mean, of course, I know it's April 10 to 14, no? Pero may palabas na sa May 11. Sa palagay mo, mas marami pang iiyak paglabas?
Of course, I always say that the surveys are snapshot of voter behavior at that moment. So,
Right.
And also the possibility that some advertisements or political advertisements captured you at that moment, or some news items captured your interest at that moment. So that's why in campaigns I always say that there's just one important day, which is actual election day. How your campaign to sell yourself, either through the use of television and other medium, and also how your networks, be it political, be it volunteer networks, try to deliver as much vote as possible as you could get. So candidates normally, no matter how they are critical to Pulse Asia, I think they're all subscribed to Pulse Asia or to the other one, SWS, because they all like to have a way to understand where they are. But officially, nobody will, if you're not doing well, nobody will say that I'm supportive of this data. But it helps them, tell them where they are, because I think when we saw some candidates going down, you see them spending more on television advertising, or if you will use Secretary Bongo as an example, that heavy spending on January was really unique in this campaign because...
Or maybe nakatulong kasi 2 beses na siya nagtanggal ng shirt niya eh.
I promise you that kind of news does not even register on the voters. It's an irritant for some maybe. But, you know, to have 400 million worth of TV spots. If you have given Ocho Derecho maybe 50 million each spot, that kind of resources, that would have been different
Really?
also. Yeah.
Really?
Because
Even
it's-
with,
Because you cannot.
So it's just a matter of exposure on TV.
But you
and-
might say the right message. In this case,
Yeah,
Senator,
paano kung hindi naman maganda yung dating mo, di ba?
Yeah, but
Okay.
Secretary Bongo is with an 87% approval rating president in his TV ads. So that boosts that candidacy also. So what I'm just saying, that kind of amount of money, that's very strong. I think even incumbent senators will have a hard time raising those kind of money. So it elevated really a different campaign, but it also shows the power of television. And as Director Jimenez earlier said, social media simply amplifies these things because TV reaches a broader market. So what we're seeing now is maybe the whatever Pulse Asia comes out with the next few days.
Yeah.
That's at least a week, Doctor. A month difference, so or a few weeks. So depending on who spent most or who campaigned harder through different modes, might reflect an improvement. Some who is nauubusan na ng resources might, because some, I've seen that in some, they built a campaign but towards the end, not able to sustain it. But the most important is this week.
Yeah, okay. Well, there's someone here in the top 12 who's been there for quite a long time. It's Bato de la Rosa, and I wanted to ask Colonel Banak, how is Bato faring among the PNP personnel? Yung mga PNP ba na makakaboto o nakaboto dun sa absentee voting or makakaboto sa Monday, are they going to be voting for him?
Well, General Ronald Bato de la Rosa was a former chief PNP, and he remains popular among PNP personnel. He served in a way that really inspired PNP personnel in fighting criminality and illegal drugs. And well, this could be his advantage because he served in the PNP and is quite popular among the dependents of PNP personnel and even the AFP also.
Oh, PNP lang ba or AFP? Because we've had several PMA Philippine Military Academy graduates who have done very well in elections. There's Ping Lacson, there's Greg Onasan. Well, of course, Gary Alejano. We're not sure if he'll make it this year.
That's right. He has a good following, even in the Armed Forces of the Philippines, where he used to be a military officer before he served in the PNP or the Philippine Constabulary.
Oh, so what is it? What is it about Bato de la Rosa, Ping Lacson, Greg Onasan? I mean, people don't see them as PMA cadets. No, is it what, the uniform? Why do they get elected?
Peace and order continues to be an important concern of the public. Maybe not top, but peace and order. But if you will separate Secretary Ping and maybe General Bato, Secretary Honasan had different. Senator Trillanes had a different following.
Rebelde.
And that's why you either like him or love him. That's why they've never really reached top 10.
Yeah, and well, maybe
They're always 11, 12, because just enough. But with Secretary...
I guess it helped because, telegenic, they project well, no?
Yeah, of course, not anyone who maybe wears a uniform can make it. People have forgotten, for example, Senator Biason. His image as the one defending the coup d'etat.
Or defending the Cory Aquino government.
Defending against the coup
December
d'etat was, I think, projected him differently to the Cory Aquino followers.
Yeah.
While on the other hand, in the same election, they were voting
For Greg Onasan.
So, but that's the nature of elections. And in the case of Senator Ping Lacson, his success as an anti-crime czar, then chief PNP. During
And very close to
years
the president at the time.
Estrada at the time, propelled him in 2001. And I think the case of General Bato de la Rosa, that's a reality that with a top percentage of Filipinos favoring the war on drugs, I think is helping General Bato to be a possible senator.
Okay. Still to come, why candidates are going all out in Cebu. They're holding rallies, they're going door to door, and having listening tours to win the hearts and minds of Cebuanos. More after this short break. We'll be right back. Welcome back. Historically, midterm elections have lower turnouts than presidential elections, which are held every 6 years. In the last 3 elections, voter turnout was at around 78%. In 2016, we saw about 84% of registered voters trooping to the polls. That's about 40 million Filipinos. In that same election year, the highest number of overseas Filipino workers on record cast their ballots. 2013, 77% of voters made their voices heard, while 74% turned up in the 2010 elections. Meanwhile, provinces in the Visayas have shown a strong voter turnout in the last 2 midterm elections. Cebu remains the #1 vote-rich province with more than 3 million registered voters. And it's no surprise, candidates are always there courting the voting public in the province. So let's talk about Cebu. Ana Tabunda, Pulse Asia, and Dindo Manhit, political analyst. What do we need to know about Cebu? Not just for the candidates, but for the voters as well.
Well, as you have said, it's vote-rich, and I suppose they're trying to get at Cebu because it's the heart of the Visayan region. But I think, I expect a high turnout in Mindanao. This compared to Visayas and Balance, Luzon, and NCR, because Mindanao is really gung-ho about this administration, this being since we have a Mindanaoan president, and it's showing when we ask them about level of interest in the elections. Truly interested, it's in the high 80s in Mindanao, it's in the low 70s in Visayas and Balance, Luzon, and it's in the 60s level in NCR. Truly interested.
Okay, and that's what's going to propel President Duterte's candidates, ganun ba?
It's going to help, but there's a problem there. When we did the ballot, it was Mindanao that had the highest drop in average number of candidates voted. I think they're having difficulty. We went from 50 names in the Senatorial list in 2016 to 62. It added 4 rows, and I think the font just crossed a threshold that's difficult for them to read those little fonts. They're not really, many of our people don't really read much, especially since you can get the news over TV, over radio. So it's difficult for them. They were naming from an average of 11 before, they suddenly, or 10, they went down to 7. That's Mindanao.
Okay, so and what we're saying is that this could be the fill-out, what we call the fill-out rate.
Yes, that's a fill-out rate. It dropped most dramatically in Mindanao, where we have a large percentage of the Class E.
Okay, so Director Jimenez, sobra ata yung tinatanggap niyo senatorial candidates. I'm sure that's not what Ana Tabunda meant.
I'm more concerned about the claim that the fonts are too small, because number one, they're optimized optically, and
what do you mean by that? Optimized optically?
They're spaced so that they're easy to read, and their vertical sizes are not very far off from where they were before. In fact, it's the ballot length that adjusts, not the text. So I don't know that that's exactly the case. It could be that there are relatively more unknowns now. So maybe that has an effect. But again, from the strictly COMELEC point of view, I would have to say that it's probably not the font sizes.
Not the font sizes. Could it be because, why is the COMELEC accepting 62 candidates?
Well, that's really not up to us.
Like you said, relatively unknown yung iba.
Right. But then again, hindi yan sila, you wouldn't call them nuisance candidates. You wouldn't call them unqualified. You would simply call them unknowns. And that's fair. But unfortunately, the way the elections are structured, I guess now, being an unknown might actually be a liability, and with so few of the 62 actually commandeering the air all around them, then yes, you will see a drop off in the fill-out, because people tend to vote for the ones that they like. the ability of Filipinos to cross party lines seems to have been diminished, perhaps irreparably. But that's the problem. See, when you're voting for slates that are incomplete, or for voting for slates that contain, not all of the people that you love, then people do tend to just not vote anymore.
Okay, and well, there's no law that limits the number of
Absolutely.
senatorial candidates, no? Pero hindi naman siguro, I mean, like, for example, in 2022, how many senatorial candidates will we have then? Like 70? Aabot ba tayo sa 70? 100? May.
I'm more concerned about the presidential candidates then.
What are you saying? 10?
Oh, it was
Well,
already that many
In our planning, in our forward planning, that's 10 is not a number that we are surprised by.
Yeah, oo.
We are in fact
yeah, we've had that
more
number.
than 10.
Oo. Well, Filipinos love elections, no? It's like, parang sabong lang yan eh. But anyway, well, I wanted to talk briefly about this. Dahil nababanggit naman, you have President Duterte endorsing candidates. And sometimes, in the local election, di ba, yung magkakaribal pa, tinaas niya yung kamay ng isa, tinaas din yung kamay ng isa, halimbawa, no? But I wanted to ask about this because, like, for example, no, in 1987, you had Cory Aquino, 22 of her 24 bets, making it to the Senate. But that's also because of the euphoria, hindi ba, of the February Revolution. And then you had Gloria Arroyo. What was it? A dismal Dindo? 2 out of 12?
No, unique with Gloria Macapagal Arroyo was she was an unpopular president.
Yeah, and this was the 2004 election, no?
2007.
The 2007, right. Okay, so after the 2004, you had the Hello Garci controversy. So,
Yes.
ang daming challenges along the way, including Magda Law.
People were avoiding being her candidate.
Okay.
Yeah, at that time.
Yeah, okay.
And in 2013, you have to remember, the slate of President Aquino was also successful. Some of the members of the slate are named Senator Cayetano, Senator Pimentel, members of basically PDP Laban and Hugpo now. A lot of these names that we see in Hugpo were candidates of President Aquino, who was a popular president also in 2013.
Yeah, okay. But do presidential endorsements work better in senatorial elections ba? Or sa presidential? Kasi when you look at it, for example, Cory endorsed FVR in 92, panalo. But then, of course, that's because FVR was popular also. No?
No, but FVR just got 24%.
24% minority 23%, di ba?
After
minority
1 month
president.
counting.
Yeah.
You
Kasi
asked Miriam-
manual.
You asked Miriam Defensor.
Kasi manual kasi tayo
Yeah,
noon.
manual.
Ako, naalala ko tuloy Sulu Hotel. But anyway, okay.
That's
And
what I'm
then, so 92. Pero 98, when FVR endorsed Rene de Villa, talo.
Joe de Venecia.
Sorry, Joe de Venecia. Oo.
It's, I think even FVR, people even got confused who the candidate of
Cory
Cory Aquino, because there was also Speaker Mitra, who was initially perceived to be the candidate, and it was
Well, he was supposed to be, well, he was the administration
candidate,
Di ba?
except not by Cory Aquino. So I think it's hard, at the end of the day, as I've said, when it's presidential, it's one-on-one. It's about you being better than the other candidate. So a popular president might help you, but in the case of Cory Aquino at the time, of course, things were not also doing well in their presidency at that time. This was the massive brownouts.
Right, the power crisis.
there
Sing
are-
kandila, araw-araw.
Yeah, so you're carrying that burden.
Yeah.
That's why it was a small lead for her endorsed candidate. But with President Fidel V. Ramos, he might be a popular candidate, but not popular enough to carry a weak candidate, which polls showed it at that time already, Joe de Venecia.
Yeah. Oh, I'm
It's not
sorry.
the way.
Oh, he had to choose pala between Joe de Venecia and Rene de Villa.
And Rene de Villa,
Pinili si
yeah.
JB
There were
Vitalo
also
pa rin,
issues
oo.
about Ramos towards the end of his administration.
Right,
Because
right.
there
The
is-
centennial. Oo.
Asian
with
crisis,
the
centennial.
power
PPP
arrangements.
purchase agreements.
It's true of every president. So it's difficult for a president to endorse.
Yeah, okay. But
It's
today,
like a Mama
President...
Sapano for
For Noynoy Aquino.
Yeah.
Oo. But today, you have an extremely popular president.
Because it's midterm.
It's
Oo,
still midterm, yeah.
Oo. But not all presidents are very popular at midterm, hindi ba?
Well, Arroyo.
Arroyo.
Gloria, and then...
Was never popular from...
Yeah, okay. So what are we saying here? That we expect na his candidates will do very well.
Well,
Ano ba yun? Yung,
we have to remember the administration gets to choose those who are likely to win in the first place. The president, this particular president, has good endorsement power because we saw him endorse two non-elected, previously unknown outside Mindanao candidates, and that's Bongo and Bato. That's the strength of his endorsement power. You see it there. Normally, the people are also looking for a match between the endorser and the endorsee, which is why Francis Tolentino is not doing as well as these two are. I think the people have a hard time seeing the connection as well as they can see it for Bongo or Bato.
But between Bato and Bongo, Bato started relatively better.
Yeah.
Kasi kilala siya, popular na
better
siya.
known, yes.
Diba? I mean, you know, he's a
He had a
character.
mascot.
Oh, he had a mascot and people liked him. You know, I mean, ang daming humingi ng picture niya. Minsan more than President Duterte, di ba? Tapos,
But he stepped down a year before. As PNP chief, he lost the
Attention.
attention. He went into
Bilibid, yeah.
he head the Bilibid. So I think that 1 year affected. Then there was that failed movie. You have to accept that also. That
I think
when
the-
you have that misstep like that, it carries a certain burden
I think
temporarily.
Yeah,
I think the
okay.
mistake there was they asked the people to pay for entrance. They should have just aired it on a national network, right?
or
for free.
Facebook for
Right.
free, social media. Okay. Well, we need to move on. Philippine National Police has identified 701 election hotspots for Monday's midterm elections. The region with the highest number of hotspots is the Bangsamoro Autonomous Region. So, Colonel Banak, kanina sinabi niyo na nga no, na you're prepared, high alert status, red alert, you have regional mobile forces on standby,
Right.
etc. You did say, though, that there could be untoward incidents, no?
Right.
When we talk about hotspots, basically, it's not just the terrorist groups, but we're also talking about yung mga private armed groups, yung mga armado ng mga politiko, ng mga kandidato.
Yes, when we talk about the hotspot under the red category, categorized under the red category, this means that these places have the potential to have incidents of violence coming from threat groups like the Abu Sayyaf group, the communist terrorist NPAs, and breakaway groups like the BIFF. And of course, we add to that the intense political rivalry coming from the parties involved, the candidates, and the incidents that took place in the last two elections, like 2016 and 2013. So all these lumped together, we consider the places as under this category of a red category, and therefore hotspots.
Okay, but you have been able to disarm these groups, right?
Yes.
Or do they still have firearms in their possession?
Yes, we did the campaign.
They still have
against-
firearms in their possession?
We suspect that they still have loose firearms. The private, we're still looking at 34 suspected private armed groups in these areas, and we have been successful in our campaign against loose firearms because of our intensified campaign on implementing the gun ban, of course. And in fact, we have already confiscated around 4,000 plus
Yeah,
of
oo.
assorted firearms.
Yeah,
because
you
of
refer
this
to the
gun ban.
election gun ban, meaning kahit na may license, kahit may lisensya ka at kahit may permit to carry o
That's
PTC ka, walang kwenta yan kung wala kang
You're
exception.
not allowed to
no?
carry that outside your residence. You have to place that inside your vault, or otherwise you have to surrender it for custody.
Pero bakit meron pa kayo na aresto na lumalabag doon sa election gun ban? Di nila alam?
Well, they know there is a gun ban, but still they take chances. You know, they may be escorting a VIP or a businessman or a politician.
Yeah, or some of them are not even armed escorts of these VIPs or politicians or candidates, hindi ba? Some of them are ordinary citizens.
That's right. And even the implementation of search warrants against suspected private armed groups and even elected government officials who have been suspected hiding contraband and loose firearms. We have been very successful in this. In fact, we have confiscated a lot of firearms against elected government
Yeah.
officials.
Yeah, oo. Yung mga checkpoints nyo in these hotspots, in these very closely monitored areas, still follow, of course, the rules for checkpoints, right?
That's correct. We have to be very courteous, and we have to follow the rules implementing the checkpoint. Like, we only do a visual search. We're not supposed to order everybody to come out and step down.
Unless the driver and the passengers of the vehicle choose to open, for example, the glove
Oh yes, of course.
compartment,
They
the
voluntary
door.
to step
window,
down,
oo.
step out of the car,
Yeah.
and that's okay. But they don't have to. They can stay inside the car, and then we just do a visual search.
Oh,
of
do we
the
need to
vehicle.
open the lights?
Oh, it helps, of course.
It helps.
Of course, we need to see the people inside, of course. We do a visual search, like, especially at night.
Okay, we need to go to a very brief break. We're going to be right back. Stay with us. Polls open as early as 6 in the morning, Monday, May 13. Filipinos will vote in midterm elections. Final words now from our guests, Ana Tabunda of Pulse Asia.
Just like everybody else, I'd like to encourage our people to go out and vote so that their preferences will be registered.
And fill out those 12 ovals.
Fill out the slots that they want to fill out.
Okay. And May 11, Pulse Asia, May 11 ng gabi, Saturday.
We're targeting the evening
target.
news.
Wow,
Yeah.
everybody's going to be waiting for that. Okay, Dindo Manhit.
Of course, democracy is very important. Our democracy is alive. We've seen 90 days of actual campaigning. And for the candidates in their campaign, last few days, to transform their popularity into actual votes. Surveys doesn't really reflect it if it's not voted and counted. So critical next few days for the different campaigns all over the country.
And for the next election, for those who don't make it.
It could be a good practice for them.
Practice. Colonel Banak of the PNP.
Thank you very much. We call on the public. We urge them to be very vigilant and alert, and report to the police any untoward incident or any concern that they may encounter during the election day. And we are there to serve them, to help them, and then assist them. If there's any concern at the polling place, we will bring them to the police station so that order will be restored at the polling places. So we maintain order in the polling
At
place.
sumunod siyempre sa batas, including
And to
the
follow
election gun ban,
law.
many others. Okay. PPCRV Maribel Buenaobra.
Yes, we would like to encourage the voters to go out and vote, maging mapanuri sa kanilang mga kandidato, karakter, kakayahan, katapatan. We are deploying about 300,000 volunteers on election day, but we still need volunteer encoders at the command center. We're launching it tomorrow, so if you want to volunteer, come and visit
This
us.
is in Popayos.
This is in Popayos.
Manila.
Yes.
All right, so pwede pa. Is there a number that people can call if they want to volunteer there?
Yes, there's a number that they can call, 536-5819.
536-5819. And finally, COMELEC spokesman James Jimenez.
Yes, very important for the voters. Do not overvote. Vote only for the required number of slots for every race. And relative to the impending release of the survey, please remember, make up your own mind. The surveys offer a snapshot of who's popular at that moment, but it's not really the sole decider of who you should vote for. Ultimately, that choice is yours.
At pwede magdala ng kodigo.
Pwede magdala ng kodigo.
Whether handwritten, print
Or sample
out,
ballot
or
or
whatever.
whatever.
The only thing you
Pwede yan.
cannot do, James, a reminder,
Is take a picture of your filled up ballot.
so forget your selfies. So don't bring your smartphone, ganun ba? All right, thank you very much to our guests tonight, Ana Tabunda of Pulse Asia, Dindo Manhit, political analyst, Colonel Bernard Banak of the Philippine National Police, spokesman Maribel Buenaobra of the Parish Pastoral Council for Responsible Voting, PPCRV, and James Jimenez, spokesman for the COMELEC. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for being with us, and thank you for watching the Filipino Votes, an election primer. I'm Pio Ontiveros. This is CNN Philippines.